the unexpected guest. The wind had been howling since sunset, a relentless cry that whipped through the trees surrounding our house like a warning. Rain hammered against the windows, a sharp rhythm that echoed through the empty hallways. The electricity had flickered twice already, and by the time the power finally gave out completely, our old country house was shrouded in silence and darkness. I lit a candle and set it on the edge of my desk. The glow barely pushed back the shadows in my room, but it gave me a strange sense of comfort. I sat on the edge of my bed, holding a cup of tea that had already gone cold, listening to the storm rage outside. I had planned to spend the weekend alone. Mom and Dad were away visiting relatives, and I had been looking forward to the peace. Until the knock came. A sharp, distinct rap on the front door. I froze. It was already past 10. Who would come to our house this late in a storm like this? For a moment, I thought I might be imagining it. But then I heard it again, firmer this time. Knock, knock, knock. My heart skipped. I crept down the stairs in the dim candlelight, clutching my robe tighter around me. As I reached the bottom, lightning lit up the front hallway, followed immediately by a loud crack of thunder. My breath hitched when I saw the silhouette on the other side of the frosted glass. I hesitated, then opened the door. "Rihan?" I gasped. My cousin stood soaked on the porch, his hoodie dripping water onto the steps, his eyes squinting through the rain. He looked older, more rugged than I remembered. It had been over 2 years since we'd last seen each other. "Hey," he said, his voice deep and oddly calm. "Sorry to show up like this. Got caught in the storm. Thought I'd crash here tonight. Hope that's okay." I nodded, stepping aside quickly. "Of course. Come in. You're drenched." He stepped inside, bringing a burst of cold air with him. I shut the door behind him, then hurried to grab towels. As he peeled off his wet hoodie, I noticed the subtle strength in his shoulders, the faint stubble along his jawline, and the tiredness in his eyes. He looked different. "Mom and Dad aren't home," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "They're out of town until Sunday." "Just you here?" he asked, drawing his hair. I nodded. "Even better," he muttered under his breath, then offered a crooked smile. "I mean, easier for me. No explanations." That smile. It was familiar, nostalgic, yet something about it felt slightly off. Or maybe it was the storm, or the way the shadows played tricks in the candlelight. We sat in the living room, the candle between us flickering softly. I offered him tea, which he accepted gratefully. His eyes moved around the room slowly, as if taking in memories. But every now and then, they landed on me a little too long. "You've changed," he said suddenly. I looked up, startled. "What? You've grown up. Last time I saw you, you still had braces and wore oversized sweaters." I laughed nervously. "Well, people do grow up in 2 years." "You did more than that," he murmured, eyes lingering. A bolt of lightning flashed again, lighting up his face for a moment. There was something intense in his gaze, like he was studying me, searching for something unspoken. "You okay?" I asked, unsure how to interpret the silence that followed. "Yeah. Just been through a lot lately. Needed a place to breathe." I didn't press. Instead, I told him he could take the guest room upstairs. He nodded, but made no move to stand. We sat there for another few minutes in the quiet hum of rain and wind. It was oddly peaceful, comforting, yet unsettling. Eventually, I excused myself and returned to my room. I shut the door gently and leaned against it, exhaling slowly. The sound of thunder had become a lullaby. I crawled back into bed and pulled the covers up, trying to still my racing thoughts. But I couldn't shake the feeling. Something about the way he looked at me, the tone in his voice, the heaviness in the air. I blew out the candle. Darkness swallowed the room again. I tried to sleep, but I couldn't ignore the soft creak of footsteps on the floorboards outside my door, followed by a light, barely audible knock. Chapter 2. The Midnight Visit. The knock was so soft it could have been mistaken for a trick of the wind, but I knew better. It came again. 3 gentle taps against the wood, hesitant yet deliberate. I held my breath, heart thudding against my ribs like a warning drum. My room was shrouded in near-complete darkness, the only light coming from the faint glow of moonlight breaking through the storm clouds and slipping between the curtains. Another knock. I sat up, slowly. My body moved before my mind caught up, slipping my feet into slippers and padding silently across the floor. When I opened the door just a crack, he was standing there. Rihan, shirtless now, his hair still damp from the rain, chest rising and falling slowly in the hallway shadows. His eyes found mine immediately, unreadable, intense. The candle he held cast golden waves over his face, softening his expression, but doing nothing to lessen the tension hanging in the air. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. "Is everything okay?" I whispered. I couldn't sleep. I hesitated. "You're sure?" He gave a small nod, eyes searching my face like he was looking for permission beyond words. I stepped aside. He walked in slowly, placing the candle on my desk. The room flickered with its glow once again. Rian's gaze swept over my space, my books, the wall photos, the stuffed bear from when I was little. His lips curled slightly. "It still smells like you," he murmured, brushing his fingers over the old scarf draped on my chair. "Like vanilla and jasmine." I blinked, caught off guard. "You remember that?" "I never forgot it," he said, turning to face me fully. "Your scent, your laugh, the way you used to follow me around during summers like a shadow." I looked down, suddenly feeling 10 years old again. That was a long time ago. "Not long enough to forget," he said, stepping closer. My breath hitched. "Well, are you really here, Rian?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "You could have gone to a hotel, or called my parents." He was quiet for a moment, then looked down at the floor. "Because this is the only place that's ever felt safe." That answer shouldn't have stirred anything in me, but it did. I could feel something inside shift, some long-forgotten warmth curling up from the edges of my chest. And yet, this was my cousin, my family, the boy I used to call Riri when I was too small to pronounce his name. But this man standing before me now wasn't that boy. "What are you running from?" I asked softly. He looked at me again, something like pain flickering in his eyes. Heartbreak, chaos, loneliness. His voice dropped. "You ever feel like everyone wants something from you except peace?" I swallowed. "Sometimes." His eyes met mine, the silence between us humming like the tension before a thunderclap. He took another step forward. "You're not a little girl anymore," he said. I nodded, unable to look away. "And you're not the cousin I remember." He smiled, but it wasn't playful. It was slow, knowing, almost sad. "I shouldn't be in here," he said, but I couldn't stop myself. I took a breath. "Then maybe you should stay, just for a little while." He stepped closer, his presence wrapping around me like the rain outside. Soft, but unrelenting. We stood so close now that I could feel the heat radiating from his bare skin. His fingers grazed mine, and a shiver shot through me. Not from cold. "You've grown beautiful," he whispered. "Too beautiful." I closed my eyes. "I shouldn't want to touch you like this," he said, voice cracking. "But when I saw you tonight, alone, glowing in the candlelight, it undid something in me." I opened my eyes again, meeting his gaze. "Then don't touch me, unless you mean it." His hand brushed against my cheek, hesitant at first, then bolder. My breath caught. His thumb traced the curve of my jaw, and for a moment, the storm outside didn't exist. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was charged. And then, slowly, so slowly, he leaned forward, not kissing me, just resting his forehead against mine. "Do you feel it too?" he asked. "Yes," I whispered. He didn't move, neither did I. There was no kiss, no dramatic pull, just that electric moment where everything changed and nothing was said aloud. The heat, the danger, the taboo. "Live?" He stepped back. "I'll go before I lose control," he said, voice hoarse. He turned and walked out, the candlelight flickering with his movement. At the door, he paused. "Good night," he said, and he was gone, leaving my room darker than before, and my heart pounding with something I didn't have a name for yet. Chapter 3, The Morning After. The storm had passed by morning, but its aftermath lingered in the thick humidity clinging to the walls and the heavy silence blanketing the house. I hadn't slept much. My thoughts had raced through the night, replaying every word, every look, every unspoken breath between us. I awoke to pale sunlight seeping in through the curtains and the distant chirping of birds reclaiming the world after the rain. But nothing felt normal. The air in the room was still thick with the memory of him. I pulled on a soft sweater and tiptoed down the stairs, unsure if he'd stayed or slipped away before sunrise. My heart pounded with a strange mix of anticipation and fear. The guest room door was open, empty. For a moment, my stomach dropped. But then I heard faint noises from the kitchen, the soft clinking of plates, the low hum of music coming from his phone. I exhaled, not even realizing I'd been holding my breath, and stepped into the doorway. He stood by the stove, shirtless again, wearing only a pair of black pajama pants that hung dangerously low on his hips. His back was to me, and I couldn't help but pause and take him in. The way his muscles moved with each motion, the casual grace he carried, the familiarity that now felt laced with something forbidden. "Morning," I said quietly. He turned, and a slow smile curved on his lips. "Morning." I stepped further in, wrapping my arms around myself. "You cook now?" He shrugged, flipping something in the pan. "Only when I'm trying to make up for showing up unannounced." I gave a small smile. "You left my room last night." "I had to," he said, voice low. "If I hadn't, I wouldn't have stopped." His words hit me with a thud. My breath caught, my cheeks flushing despite the coolness of the morning air. He turned off the stove and placed 2 plates on the counter. Scrambled eggs, toast. Nothing fancy, but the gesture carried weight. We sat in silence for a few minutes, both of us eating slowly, the tension between us simmering just beneath the surface. "Did you sleep?" I asked, watching him from across the table. Barely, he admitted. Too much on my mind. Me too. Her eyes locked. He leaned back in his chair, fingers drumming lightly on the table. You remember the last time we were alone like this? I frowned, trying to reach back in time. Was it that summer? The one before? Everything changed? He nodded. Yeah. You were 16. You'd just gotten your braces off. And you were obsessed with that notebook. What was it? The one with all your secret stories in it? I laughed softly. I still have it, actually. I bet they were all love stories, he teased. Maybe, I said with a smirk. Why? Are you hoping you were in one? He raised an eyebrow. Was I? My smile faded slightly. Maybe. Silence. He stood, taking his plate to the sink. The morning light caught the curve of his jaw, the tension in his neck. Something unspoken hung between us, pulling tighter and tighter with each passing second. I need to ask you something, he said finally, not turning around. Okay. He gripped the edge of the sink, his knuckles white. If I hadn't been your cousin, would you want me? The question hit like a bolt of lightning. I stood slowly, unsure what to say. I stepped toward him, each heartbeat louder than the last. I think, I whispered, that I want you anyway. He turned then, eyes searching mine like he was still afraid of the answer. But I didn't back away. I stood close enough that the scent of his skin made my knees weak. Is that so wrong? I asked, voice trembling. His hand reached out, brushing my hair behind my ear. It should be. But it doesn't feel wrong, I said. No, he whispered. It feels inevitable. And then his hand was at my waist, pulling me closer. But before our lips could meet, before the heat could turn to flame, the sound of a car engine rumbled outside. We both froze. I turned toward the window. Dust stirred in the driveway. My parents. They're back, I whispered. But as jaw clenched, his hand dropped. Then we pretend, he said quickly. Nothing happened. We're just cousins. You're just helping me wait out the storm. I nodded. My heart was still racing. But deep inside, something had already shifted. We had crossed a line, even without a kiss. And pretending would only get harder. Much, much harder. Chapter 4, Pretending is a Lie. The front door opened, with the sound of keys jangling and familiar voices echoing through the hall. I stepped back from Rehan so quickly I almost tripped on the chair. He moved just as fast, wiping down the counter like he'd been cleaning the whole time. My heart pounded in my chest, not just from the sudden interruption, but from the truth now tangled between us, like threads pulled too tight. Sweetheart? My mother's voice called. I cleared my throat, trying to sound normal. In the kitchen. Their footsteps were fast, bags rustling, the door closing behind them. And then they appeared, my parents, smiling and slightly windblown from the stormy trip. Oh, thank God the roads are finally clear, my father said, tossing the keys onto the table. We thought we'd be stuck another night. My mother's eyes flicked between me and Rehan. You're here early, she said to him, slightly surprised. Yeah, Rehan said, easily. Roads were a mess. Figured I'd get ahead of it. Hope it's okay I crashed here. Of course, she said, her expression warming. Your family. Family. The word rang out like a cold bell. I forced a smile. He made breakfast. My father sniffed the air. Smells good. I barely registered the rest of the small talk. I stood there, a ghost in my own home, trying to keep my hands from shaking, because I couldn't stop replaying what had almost happened moments before. Irhan's hand on my waist, his breath mingling with mine, the way he'd asked if I wanted him, even though he shouldn't. My mother turned to me, placing a hand on my arm. "Are you okay? You look pale." "I'm just tired," I said quickly. "You and me both," she sighed, and thankfully didn't press further. The day passed in a blur. I buried myself in chores, reading, anything to avoid being in the same room as Rihan. Every time I saw him, something twisted inside me. Desire wrapped in guilt, curiosity tangled with fear. But by evening, avoiding him became impossible. We were alone again. My parents had gone to bed early, exhausted from the trip. I found him sitting on the back porch, under the pale stars, a glass of something in his hand, the glow of a cigarette faint in the dark. "You smoke now?" I asked quietly, stepping out. He didn't look at me at first. "Only when I can't think straight." "I guess you've been smoking a lot lately then." His lips curved faintly, but his eyes stayed on the sky. "You okay?" "No," I admitted. "I'm not." He finally turned. The porch light barely illuminated his face, but I could see the conflict there, the storm that hadn't passed. "Is pretending," I said. "I can't do it." "I know," he said. "I've been pretending for a long time already, before I ever got here." My breath caught. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, then set the glass down and stood. "I didn't come here just to escape the rain, or to visit. I came here because I couldn't keep pretending that I didn't want to see you again." I stared at him. "Since when?" "The summer I left," he said quietly. "When you hugged me goodbye and cried like you were losing your best friend. That night I couldn't sleep. I replayed it 100 times. I told myself it would pass, but it never did." My voice shook. "You were 19. I was 16. I know. I hated myself for what I felt. I tried dating other people, tried forgetting. It never worked." He stepped closer. "And then I saw you last night, and I knew." "Knew what?" "News that this thing between us, whatever it is, it's not just in my head. It's not just wrong. It's real." The air between us vibrated. He reached out and gently took my hand. "You're scared," he said. "I'm terrified." He nodded. "Me too." A long pause followed. "But I don't think I can stop," he whispered. "Not now. Not when I've seen you like this. So close, so real." My heart beat wildly. "What do we do?" I whispered. His grip tightened slightly. "We hide it. For now. But we don't lie to ourselves anymore." I hesitated, but then slowly nodded. Because pretending in front of others was one thing, but lying to my own heart? It was impossible. Chapter 5. The tension builds. The following days passed like a fragile dream, thin threads of secrecy holding everything together while the reality around us remained unchanged on the surface. We ate dinner as a family, smiled at each other across the table, and made small talk as though nothing stirred beneath. But between me and Rihan, everything had changed. The tension was unbearable. Every glance we shared crackled like electricity. Every accidental brush of his fingers against mine felt like fire. Even the silence between us pulsed with something deeper, something dangerously alive. It was worst at night, because I knew he was just across the hall. And I knew he was thinking about me too. Sometimes I could hear the creak of his bed as he turned restlessly, as if fighting the same internal storm I was drowning in. Sometimes I caught him watching me when he thought I wasn't looking. His eyes dark, questioning, and filled with want. I tried to distract myself. I read. I scrolled endlessly on my phone. I listened to music louder than I should. But it never drowned out the memory of his words on the porch. "I can't stop. Not now." One night, a week after my parents had returned, the silence finally shattered. I had gone to the kitchen for water. The house was asleep, quiet and still. But as I stepped into the dimly lit hallway, I froze. Rihan stood there, shirtless, Etienne. His eyes were wide with surprise, like he hadn't expected to see me either. For a moment, neither of us moved. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked, his voice low. "No," I said. He nodded and took a step toward me. "Me neither." I looked at the glass in my hand. "Water helps sometimes." "Does it?" he asked, and suddenly his tone was different, teasing, intimate. Swallowed. "Sometimes." We stood in silence, too close, too quiet. "I keep thinking about that night," he said softly. "When I walked into your room, my breath caught." "Me too." He moved a little closer, the air between us tight and charged. "I still feel you," he whispered. "Still see the way you looked at me." "Then why did you leave?" I whispered. "Because if I stayed," his voice dropped, "I would have done things I can't take back." My pulse thundered. "What if I wanted you to?" He stared at me. Then, suddenly, his hand was at my jaw, fingers tracing the line of my cheek. "Say that again." "What if I wanted you to stay?" I breathed. A long pause. His thumb brushed across my lips. "Then I would have kissed you." I felt like I couldn't breathe. The space between us vanished. I tilted my chin up, heart hammering. But just before our lips touched, footsteps echoed from upstairs. We jumped apart, hearts racing. It was my mother's voice, sleepy. "Honey, you okay down there?" I called out quickly, voice trembling. "Yeah, just getting water." Rian stepped back into the shadows. "Go," he whispered. I did. But that night, sleep didn't come. And the hunger inside me was now a living, breathing thing. Chapter 6. Midnight Confessions. The next day passed like walking a tightrope. Rihan and I barely spoke. My mother made pancakes, humming in the kitchen like she didn't feel the storm swirling through the house. My father grumbled about work emails, completely unaware that every moment, every heartbeat, every look between me and Rihan was drenched in tension and restraint. By evening, I could hardly take it. I wandered out to the garden behind the house, hoping the fresh air would quiet the noise in my head. The stars were beginning to show, blinking down at me like 1,000 watchful eyes. But even the breeze felt charged, like the earth itself could feel how close I was to the edge. The sliding door creaked open behind me. I didn't turn. I knew it was him. He didn't speak right away, but I could feel him watching me. "Why do you keep running away from me?" he asked finally, voice quiet but intense. I turned slowly to face him. "Because if I don't, I'll do something I can't undo." His jaw tensed. "Like what?" "Like pull you in and never let go." The words slipped out before I could stop them. He stepped closer, then let go. I shook my head, trembling. "This is wrong, Rihan. You're my cousin." "Not by blood," he said firmly, And we both know that's not what's stopping you." My silence told him he was right. He came even closer now, his voice a whisper. "It's fear. Fear of what they'll think, of what it means. But tell me this. Do you want me?" I couldn't lie anymore. Not to him. Not to myself. "Yes," I breathed. The word seemed to shatter the final wall between us. He reached out, slow and deliberate, brushing his fingers down my arm. "I think about you every night," he said, "even before I came here. The way you laughed when we were kids, the way you looked at me last week. I thought I was imagining it. But I'm not, am I?" No. We stood in the dark, wrapped in tension and moonlight. His hand moved to my waist, pulling me gently closer, until I could feel his breath on my skin. "I'm tired of pretending," he whispered. "So am I." And then he kissed me. Not the playful kind of flirtation he'd toyed with before. This kiss was real, deep, desperate. It was the kiss of someone who had been waiting too long. Our hands tangled, my back pressed against the garden wall. His mouth moved against mine with a hunger that told me he'd been dreaming of this moment too. The night, the scent of wildflowers, the feel of his hands, all of it blurred into something dizzying. But even in that heated moment, guilt clawed at the edge of my mind. What if someone saw? What if we were caught? When we finally pulled apart, gasping, he rested his forehead against mine. "We can't do this here," I whispered. "Then let's go somewhere we can," he replied. I stared at him, wide-eyed. "Anywhere," he said. "A day trip. An excuse. I don't care. I just need one day with you." My heart pounded. I knew what I was agreeing to wasn't just a getaway. It was a crossing of a line we couldn't return from. But I was already falling. I had been for a long time. I nodded slowly. "Tomorrow." Chapter 7. The Escape. I barely slept that night. The moonlit kiss replayed in my head like a fever dream. His hands on my skin, the wild thud of my heart, the raw honesty in his voice when he said, "Anywhere. I just need one day with you." When morning came, I was already packing. Just one change of clothes, a scarf, my toothbrush, and a pair of sunglasses. Things that said casual, but hid the storm underneath. I told my mother that Rihan and I were going to the lake for a few hours. She didn't question it. Why would she? We were cousins. Nothing suspicious about that. If only she knew. Rihan was waiting in the car, engine running, tapping the steering wheel like he was holding back nerves or excitement, or both. When he saw me, his smile wasn't playful this time. It was serious, nervous, deep. "You sure about this?" he asked. "No," I said, "but I'm going anyway." He laughed softly, reached across the seat, and laced his fingers through mine. The road stretched ahead like a secret passageway. Trees whipped past the window. Music played low from the radio. Melancholic, romantic, almost knowing. Neither of us spoke much. We didn't have to. Every silence said what we were both thinking. We weren't just escaping the house. We were escaping the rules. The lake was deserted when we arrived. The air smelled like pine and still water. We walked along the edge in silence, shoes crunching on gravel, the sun casting golden light across everything. It should have felt calm, but the tension between us kept building. When we reached the farthest part of the trail, where the trees shielded us from view, Rihan finally stopped. "This is insane," he said, breathless. "Do you know how long I've wanted this moment?" I turned to face him, heart pounding, Say it. He blinked. Say how long? He stepped close, hands trembling slightly as he cupped my face. Since the first summer you grew up in front of my eyes. Since I realized you weren't a kid anymore. Since you started looking at me like you knew I was looking too. He kissed me then, harder than before. No hesitation. I melted into him, fingers twisting in his shirt, breath lost in the space between us. The lake glimmered beside us, the world forgotten. When his hand slid to my hips and I leaned into his chest, it felt like a dam had finally burst. I don't care anymore, he murmured. If it's wrong, if it's complicated, I can't stay away from you. We sat together on the grass for hours, touching, whispering, confessing. He told me things he'd never admitted to anyone, how lonely he'd been, how lost. I told him how long I'd secretly wished for something I couldn't explain, even to myself. The escape wasn't just about the kiss. It was about truth, about finally facing the feelings we'd buried under years of silence. But as the sun began to lower in the sky and the shadows stretched longer, something shifted. Rehan's phone buzzed. He checked it, and his face went pale. What is it? I asked. It's your mom, he said slowly. She's asking why my car isn't in the driveway. My heart froze. You left it out front? I didn't even think. Suddenly, the escape didn't feel so far from home anymore. We packed up quickly, panic settling in. On the way back, the silence wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating. What if she knows? I whispered. She can't, he said, but he didn't sound confident. As we turned onto our street, I saw my mother standing on the porch, arms crossed, eyes sharp, waiting. Chapter 8. The Confrontation. My heart was pounding so loud, I could barely hear the tires crunching on the gravel as we pulled into the driveway. There, standing like a statue on the front porch, was my mother. Arms folded, lips pressed in a firm, unreadable line. She wasn't smiling, she wasn't moving, and she wasn't fooled. Rehan turned off the ignition and looked at me, his voice low and filled with dread. Let me handle it. But I shook my head. No, if this is happening, we face it together. He gave a tiny nod, his hand brushing against mine. Then we stepped out of the car. Mom didn't say anything at first. She just looked at us. Her eyes flicked from me to Rehan, from his rumpled shirt to my wind-blown hair. Something in her expression shifted, from suspicion to realization. I called you 3 times, she said finally. No answer. I didn't hear it, I stammered. We went out near the lake. There was no signal. Don't lie to me, she snapped. I fell silent. Her eyes narrowed. What exactly is going on between the two of you? Neither of us answered. That was enough of an answer. She took a sharp breath and looked at Rehan like she didn't recognize him anymore. You're her cousin. You came here to stay for a week, and this is what you do? I'm not her blood relative, Rehan said, calm but firm. And I didn't plan this, it just happened. Just happened, she echoed, her voice rising. Do you know how dangerous this is? How disgusting it looks? How the family would react if they knew? I stepped forward. Mom, stop. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, she hissed. I let you stay under the same roof because I trusted you both. And now you come back from some secret trip together looking like you've just... like you... She stopped, disgusted. No, I don't want to hear it. Rihan's jaw clenched. We didn't plan to hurt anyone. But you have, she said, and you will. Do you think your father would accept this? Do you think the rest of the family won't talk? Judge? I don't care what they say, I said, quietly. I care about what I feel. And what I feel for him, it's real. She stared at me like she didn't know who I was anymore. I raised you better than this. Tears filled my eyes. You raised me to follow my heart. She turned her back, pressing her fingers to her temples. For a long time, no one spoke. The only sound was the wind rustling through the trees. Finally, without facing us, she said, "Go inside. We'll talk about this later." "But Mom..." "Oh." Rihan reached for my hand, and we walked silently into the house. The tension clung to every wall like smoke. We could feel her anger pulsing even from behind the closed door. In my room, I sat on the bed, trembling. "It's over, isn't it?" Rihan knelt beside me. "No, it's just beginning. But you'll never accept us. Then we'll make our own way," he said softly. "Even if it's hard." I looked at him. This boy who had become my secret, my storm, my heart. And I knew we were on the edge of something terrifying and unstoppable. Even if the world turned its back on us, we weren't going to turn away from each other. Not now. Not ever. Chapter 9. The Choice. The house felt colder the next morning. My mother barely looked at me. The clatter of dishes, the scrape of a chair, everything was louder than her silence. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply moved around, like I wasn't there. Rihan left early for a walk. Maybe to give her space, or maybe to escape the tension smothering us all. I sat at the table, staring at the steam rising from my untouched tea. My hands trembled, my thoughts whirled. The dream we'd allowed ourselves. The day by the lake. The kiss under stars. Had broken something. Maybe it was a rule. Maybe it was trust. Or maybe it was just the illusion that we could keep feeling this way and no one would ever know. By late afternoon, Rihan still hadn't come back. The silence stretched. I found Mom in the garden, watering her tulips. Her face was tired, older somehow. "Can we talk?" I asked. She didn't answer at first. Then, "If you're still seeing him, then there's nothing left to say." "I need you to understand something," I said gently. "This isn't just a crush. This isn't a phase. I've tried to fight it for weeks. I've tried pretending we're just family, just friends. But I can't anymore." She lowered the watering can, turning to face me. Her eyes glistened. "I know what love can do to people," she said softly. "I've seen it destroy marriages, ruin families, twist good intentions into bad decisions." I swallowed. "And sometimes love saves people." She looked away. "Are you prepared for what will come? For how people will talk? For the ones who won't understand?" "I am," I said, "because what we feel is real, and I'm tired of being afraid of it." For a long time she just stood there, and then finally she nodded. "I may never be comfortable with it, but I'll love you through it." Tears spilled down my cheeks. "Thank you." That night, Rihan returned with his bags packed. "I'm leaving," he said at the doorway, eyes heavy. "I don't want to make this harder for you." "You think walking away would make it easier for me?" I asked. He stepped forward. "Your mother hates me. She doesn't. She's scared. I can't stay here and hurt your family." "Then don't stay here," I said. Take me with you. He blinked. What? We'll leave. Not because we're running away, but because we're choosing something for ourselves. For once. He dropped his bags. Are you sure? I smiled. You asked me once if I wanted you. I didn't just want you, Rihan. I needed to know if you'd fight for me. His arms wrapped around me in the quietest, strongest answer. We left at dawn. No fanfare, no goodbye. Just two souls, finally free to walk into the unknown, hand in hand, heart in heart. We didn't know where we were going, but we had each other, and that was enough. Because love, real, raw, imperfect love, doesn't ask for permission. It just asks for the courage to choose. And we chose each other. The end.